Hey guys, my name's Aaron and you're watching Hobby Fiend. Today I'm going to take you through how I painted up this Ultramarine and how you can too. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Over a black primer, we're going to sketch in some volumetric highlights with an airbrush. For this, I'm using titanium white from Liquitex, mixed with some airbrush thinner. The aim with this step is to pick out the areas that would receive the most light, whilst avoiding the areas that would be in shadow. Make sure to do a few passes with the airbrush, as you don't want to overload the model and have the ink spiderweb everywhere. Next, we're going to tint the model using Cyanine Blue from Liquitex. You're going to need to do quite a few passes with the airbrush, as the coverage isn't great, but it's well worth doing. You can see I'm angling the model away from me so I can better access the shadow areas. The worst thing that can happen is you miss a spot and it ends up sticking out like a sore thumb later on. Once you're happy with the previous step, it's time to add in another highlight. For this, I'm using Adriatic Blue from scale 75. We're going to focus this highlight on the areas we want to be the brightest and where we imagine the light would hit the most. When you're done adding your highlight, you'll want to lock everything in place with a coat of gloss varnish, as the inks we used in previous steps tend to run and destroy all your hard work if any water gets on them. Additionally, I used a coat of AK Interactive's Ultra Matte Varnish, as I like the finish it gives. I'm not going to bore you with varnishing, so let's skip straight ahead to highlighting the armor with a brush. For this step, we're going to use Vallejo Game Color Electric Blue. I found it to be a nice bright highlight that works really well when we darken up the model later on. Something to keep in mind when you're edge highlighting, it's much easier to pull the brush towards you than it is to push away. You'll notice I constantly rotate the model so I can repeat this movement as often as possible. I find this allows for thinner and sharper edge highlights. Next, we want to block in all the areas we want to be black. For this, I'm using Vallejo Model Color Black. This is by far the best black paint I've come across and would recommend that you give it a shot if you haven't already. It's now time to give our blue boy some gold trim. For this, I'm using Necro Gold from scale 75. Slow down and try to be as neat as possible, but don't worry if you mess up. You can always go back and touch things up later. Now for the metal parts. For this, I'm using Vallejo Metal Color Steel. This paint is actually an airbrush paint, but also works wonders when applied with a brush, as the coverage is amazing. Just be careful, as the paint is already diluted, it can easily sneak up your brush and get into the ferrule. Try not to let this happen, because if it dries in there, RIP your brush. Now this part has to be one of my favorite steps. It's time to cover our battle brother in AK Interactive's Streaking Grime, or what others like to call Grimdark in a bottle. Be sure to use an old synthetic brush for this, as the harsh enamel wash will absolutely wreck your good brushes. Once you're done covering the model, leave it to dry for only a couple of minutes, as we don't want to create too dark a tone. To remove the excess streaking grime, I'm using this makeup applicator I found on Amazon. From memory, it came in a box of 100 or so for only a few dollars. I reckon they work so much better than Q-tips, as they don't leave behind any fluff and are softer on the model, so there's less risk of tearing up paint. If you're finding the streaking grime hard to remove, add a drop or two of white spirits onto the makeup applicator. This will reactivate the streaking grime and make it easy to wipe away. You'll find that the metallics have been dulled down a little from the streaking grime, so now it's time to bring back their shine. For the gold, I'm using Peridot Alchemy from scale 75 to edge highlight. And for the steel parts, I'm using Vallejo Metal Color Silver. Our Ultramarine is really starting to come together now. Next, we're going to paint in the lenses. For this, I've chosen to do a basic glow effect, as I prefer it over the traditional reflective lens look. I'm using Vallejo Model Color White, but any white you have on hand will work perfectly fine. I've opted for a red colored glow, and for this I'm using Aldebaran Red from scale 75. I've thinned this down with quite a lot of water to a glaze-like consistency. We don't want it to completely cover the white, but rather tint it and pull in the recesses surrounding the lens. With that out of the way, all that's left to do is give our Ultramarine a base, add some special effects, and he's ready to purge in the name of the Emperor. I hope you found this useful. If you did, feel free to drop me a like and hit that subscribe button down below, as I plan on making more videos just like this in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.